At 0930 on the morning of February 23rd, 1945, Corporal Herschel Woodrow Williams crawled through volcanic ash toward a concrete pillbox that had already killed 17 Marines. The structure sat 70 yards ahead, a squat gray bunker built into the black sand of Iwo Jima, its firing slits spitting machine gun rounds at anything that moved. Williams was 21 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, 150 pounds. He carried a flamethrower on his back that weighed 72 pounds when fully loaded. The fuel tank held 5 gallons of jellied gasoline mixed with napalm. The burn time was approximately 10 seconds per trigger pull. The pillbox ahead was one of 7 that blocked the Marine advance toward Airfield No. 2. Japanese engineers had spent months constructing these fortifications, pouring concrete walls 3 feet thick, reinforcing them with steel rebar, connecting them with underground tunnels. The pillboxes were designed to withstand naval bombardment, to survive artillery barrages, to kill Americans until the last defender was dead. The Marines had been dying against these positions for 3 days. Since D-Day on February 19th, the 3rd Marine Division had lost over 2,000 men killed and wounded trying to advance across the island's central plateau. The volcanic soil absorbed explosions without cratering. Artillery rounds buried themselves in the soft ash and detonated harmlessly. The island was 8 square miles of volcanic rock and black sand. Mount Suribachi dominated the southern tip. 2 completed airfields sat in the center. American planners wanted those airfields desperately. B-29 bombers flying from the Marianas to Japan had no fighter escort, no emergency landing strip. Iwo Jima would solve those problems. The cost would be measured in Marine lives. Williams had been in the Pacific for 18 months. He had trained for amphibious assault at Camp Pendleton, practiced with flamethrowers at specialized schools in Hawaii, learned to burn enemies out of caves and bunkers that conventional weapons couldn't touch. The flamethrower was a weapon of last resort, a terror weapon. Williams had used it in training. He had never used it in combat. That was about to change. The pillbox 70 yards ahead had stopped C Company's advance cold. Captain Donald Beck had sent 3 assault teams against it. All 3 had been driven back with casualties. The machine gun inside had a clear field of fire across 200 yards of open ground. Beck found Williams in a shell crater 50 yards behind the front line. The corporal was checking his flamethrower, testing the igniter mechanism. "I need those pillboxes eliminated," Beck said. "Every one of them. Can you do it?" Williams looked toward the fortifications. 7 concrete bunkers arranged in an arc, each one covering the approaches to the others. Interlocking fields of fire. No blind spots. "Get me covering fire," Williams said. "Riflemen to keep their heads down. I'll do the rest." Beck assigned 4 Marines to cover Williams. 2 of them would be dead before the morning was over. If you want to see how Woody Williams attacked 7 Japanese pillboxes alone, please hit that like button. It helps us share these forgotten stories with more people. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Williams. The first pillbox was 70 yards away. The ground between his position and the bunker was flat, open, covered by overlapping fire from at least 3 Japanese positions. No cover, no concealment. Just black volcanic ash. Williams checked his equipment one final time. The M-2 flamethrower consisted of 2 tanks strapped to his back. The larger tank held the fuel mixture. The smaller tank held compressed nitrogen to propel the burning liquid. A hose ran from the tanks to a wand that Williams held in both hands. The weight was brutal. 72 pounds of tanks and fuel, plus his rifle, plus his ammunition. Williams was carrying nearly half his body weight in equipment. Running was impossible. The 4 riflemen assigned to cover him spread out along the crater rim. 2 had M1 Garins. 2 had Browning automatic rifles. Their job was simple: keep Japanese heads down long enough for Williams to cross 70 yards of killing ground. At 0945, Williams gave the signal. The riflemen opened fire. The first pillbox responded immediately. Machine gun rounds cracked overhead, throwing up geysers of black ash. Williams pressed himself flat and began crawling. The volcanic soil of Iwo Jima was unlike anything Marines had trained on. Fine black particles that worked into everything. The ash retained heat from underground volcanic activity, sometimes reaching temperatures that blistered skin through uniforms. Williams crawled through it, pushing forward with his elbows. The Japanese machine gunner saw movement and adjusted his aim. Rounds walked across the ground toward Williams. He pressed himself flatter, felt bullets crack past inches above his head. A second pillbox opened fire from his right. He hadn't seen it. The rounds came from a different angle, catching him in a crossfire. One bullet tugged at his trouser leg. Another ricocheted off the fuel tank on his back. If that tank ruptured, the fuel would spray across his back. If the igniter sparked, he would burn alive. Williams was carrying his own cremation on his shoulders. He kept crawling. At 50 yards from the first pillbox, he reached a slight depression in the ground. Williams paused, caught his breath. The fuel tank was intact. The hose was undamaged. 20 more yards to firing range. The machine gun had found his position. Rounds hammered the lip of the depression. He couldn't move forward. He couldn't move back. He was pinned. One of the barmen shifted position, drawing fire away from Williams. The machine gunner traversed his weapon toward the new threat. Williams used the moment. He scrambled forward, closing the distance. 40 yards. He was in range. Williams rose to one knee, aimed the flamethrower wand at the pillbox firing slit, and squeezed the trigger. A stream of liquid fire arced through the air. The jellied gasoline ignited as it left the wand, transformed into a tongue of orange flame that reached 40 yards in less than a second. The fire splashed against the concrete, ran down the walls, pooled at the base of the bunker. Some of it went through the opening. Williams heard screaming from inside the pillbox. The machine gun fell silent. Smoke poured from the firing slit. The screaming continued for perhaps 10 seconds, then stopped. One pillbox down, 6 to go. Williams had used approximately 8 seconds of fuel. He had maybe 60 seconds remaining. Every second counted. He moved toward the second pillbox. This bunker was 80 yards to his right. Its machine gun was already traversing toward him. Williams ran. The flamethrower bounced against his back as he sprinted across the ash. Bullets cracked past his head. He threw himself behind a pile of rocks, 60 yards from the second pillbox. The covering fire team was taking casualties. Williams heard a scream from behind him. One of the riflemen was hit. The volume of covering fire decreased. Williams crawled around the rock pile, seeking an approach angle outside the machine gun's direct line of fire. At 30 yards, he could see the pillbox clearly. The concrete walls were pocked with bullet marks where Marine rifles had tried and failed to penetrate. He rose to one knee and fired. The flame stream hit the bunker's side wall, splashed around the corner, found the firing slit. Again the screaming. Again the smoke. Again the silence. 2 pillboxes down. Williams checked his fuel gauge. Maybe 45 seconds remaining. 5 pillboxes left. The third pillbox was 100 yards ahead, too far for his current position. He would have to advance across open ground, under fire from at least 3 remaining bunkers. Williams looked back toward the covering fire team. 2 Marines were still shooting. 2 were down. The volume of supporting fire had been cut in half. He made a decision. He would have to move faster, take more risks. Williams rose to his feet and ran directly toward the third pillbox. The Japanese gunners saw him immediately. Machine gun fire from 3 positions converged on the running Marine. Bullets cracked past his ears, tugged at his clothing. Williams zagged right, then left. A round struck his helmet. The impact knocked him sideways, but didn't penetrate. Williams stumbled, caught himself, kept running. At 50 yards from the third pillbox, he threw himself into a shell crater. The machine gun rounds followed him, hammering the crater rim. He was close enough now. 50 yards was pushing the flamethrower's maximum range, but it would reach. Williams rose, aimed, fired. The flame stream fell short by 10 yards. The jellied gasoline splashed against the ground in front of the pillbox, burning uselessly. The machine gunner inside traversed toward him. Williams saw his death approaching. He had perhaps 2 seconds. He fired again, adjusting his aim upward to arc the flame stream higher. The burning fuel sailed over and splashed against the pillbox wall. Some of it entered the firing slit. The machine gun stopped firing. 3 down. Williams was breathing hard now. His hands were shaking on the flamethrower wand. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by exhaustion. 4 pillboxes remained. The 4th pillbox was the largest, a reinforced bunker with 2 firing slits. 2 machine guns, 2 crews, twice the firepower. This one would be the hardest. He began crawling toward it. The covering fire behind him had nearly ceased. He glanced back and saw only 1 Marine still shooting. Williams was essentially alone now. 1 man with a flamethrower against 4 remaining pillboxes. At 40 yards, Williams reached a small mound of volcanic rock. Both firing slits were active. Approaching from this angle would put him in the kill zone of both weapons. He needed a different approach. Williams began working his way to the right, circling around the bunker's flank. The ash here was softer, deeper. He sank into it, up to his elbows as he crawled. At 30 yards from the bunker's right flank, he found an angle. One of the firing slits was visible. The other was blocked by the bunker's own walls. Williams rose, aimed, fired. The flame stream engulfed the visible firing slit. Fire poured into the bunker. The screaming began immediately, louder this time, multiple voices. The machine gun in that position stopped firing. But the second gun was still active. Williams saw the barrel swinging toward him. He was 30 yards away, too close to run, too exposed to hide. He charged. Williams sprinted directly at the bunker. The machine gun opened fire, but the angle was wrong, the gunner unable to depress his weapon far enough. Rounds cracked overhead as Williams reached the bunker's side. He was against the concrete now. The machine gun barrel protruded inches from his face, still firing at where he had been moments before. Williams shoved the flamethrower wand directly into the firing slit and squeezed the trigger. Fire filled the bunker's interior. The screaming was immediate and terrible. Williams held the trigger for 3 full seconds. The heat from the flames scorched his hands even through his gloves. 4 down. Williams stepped back from the bunker wall. His hands were shaking badly. The flamethrower felt heavier than it had at the start. His legs were weak. 3 pillboxes remained. His fuel gauge was nearly empty. The 5th pillbox was 60 yards ahead. Williams studied it through ash-stung eyes. Its machine gun was silent, the crew perhaps waiting for a clear target. Williams began his approach. He was too tired to crawl now. He walked in a low crouch, moving from cover to cover. At 40 yards, the machine gun opened up. Williams threw himself flat. The gunner had been patient, had nearly succeeded in killing him. He was in range. He had fuel for maybe 1 more sustained burst. Williams rose to 1 knee and fired. The flame stream arced toward the pillbox, hit the concrete wall, splashed across the opening. Fire entered the bunker. The machine gun stopped firing. 5 down. Williams checked his fuel gauge. The needle was touching empty. 2 pillboxes left. The 6th pillbox was 80 yards ahead, beyond his fuel range. He would have to get closer using terrain he didn't have and cover that didn't exist. Williams began crawling toward the 6th bunker. His arms trembled with each movement. His legs dragged through the ash. At 50 yards, he reached a shell crater. He collapsed into it, gasping for breath. The machine gun opened fire, hammering the crater rim above his head. Williams lay in the crater for perhaps 2 minutes, gathering strength. He thought about his family in West Virginia, his mother, who had raised 11 children on a dairy farm, his brothers scattered across the Pacific. He thought about the Marines dying behind him, the men who had given their lives to give him covering fire. Their sacrifice meant nothing if he stopped now. Williams began crawling again. At 25 yards, he reached a slight fold in the ground. He gathered himself for the final rush. He rose to his feet and charged. The machine gun opened up immediately. Rounds cracked past his ears. One struck his flamethrower tank with a metallic clang. He didn't stop. Williams reached 15 yards from the pillbox and fired. The flame stream was weak, sputtering, nearly exhausted. It reached the bunker wall, splashed against the concrete, found the firing slit. The machine gun fell silent. 6 down. Williams collapsed against the bunker wall. His lungs burned. The flamethrower was empty, useless weight on his back. He had no fuel for the 7th pillbox. Then he saw the demolition charges. A dead Marine lay 20 yards away, a combat engineer who had been trying to approach the bunkers with explosives before Japanese fire cut him down. His pack was still on his back. Williams crawled to the body. The Marine's eyes were open, staring at the sky. Williams whispered an apology and rolled the corpse to reach the pack. Inside, he found 4 satchel charges, each containing 2 pounds of TNT. Williams armed the first charge and began crawling toward the 7th bunker. The approach was the longest of the day. Williams was beyond exhaustion now, operating on willpower alone. The machine gun tracked his movement, firing bursts that came closer and closer. At 30 yards, he found a shell crater. He armed the first charge, counted to 3, and threw it toward the pillbox. The throw fell short by 10 yards. The charge exploded harmlessly in the ash. 3 charges remained. Williams armed the second charge and waited for the machine gun to pause. When the firing stopped, he rose, hurled the charge, and dropped flat. The satchel charge landed against the pillbox wall, 2 feet from the firing slit. The explosion cracked the concrete, but didn't destroy the bunker. The machine gun resumed firing moments later. 2 charges left. Williams armed the third charge. This time, he crawled closer, reducing the throwing distance. At 20 yards, he was within killing range of the machine gun. The machine gun paused again. Williams threw. The charge hit the firing slit directly. The explosion was massive, devastating. The concrete around the opening shattered. The machine gun barrel bent and fell. 7 pillboxes burned or destroyed. The path to airfield number 2 was open. Williams lay in the ash, unable to move. His body had given everything. Marines from C Company passed him, advancing through the gap he had created. Someone grabbed his arm. A corpsman, checking for wounds. "I'm okay," Williams said. The corpsman helped him to a sitting position. Williams looked back across the battlefield, across the 300 yards he had covered under fire, across the 7 burning pillboxes, across the bodies of the Marines who had died to give him covering fire. He had been fighting for 4 hours. He had advanced alone against positions that had stopped an entire company. He had killed an estimated 30 Japanese soldiers. And he had opened the way for the Marine advance that would eventually capture Iwo Jima. Herschel Woodrow Williams was born on October 2nd, 1923, in Quiet Dell, West Virginia, a farming community in Harrison County. The name itself tells you everything about the place. A valley of silence and hard work, where families scraped lives from rocky soil. His father, Lloyd Williams, was a farmer who worked land that had been in the family for generations. His mother, Lorena Williams, raised 11 children in a house without running water or electricity. The family milked cows, grew vegetables, killed hogs in autumn, and survived winters that could kill the unprepared. Woody was the youngest of the 11 children. His earliest memories were of chores that began at dawn and ended at dark. The work was exhausting and constant, but it built strength that would save his life on Iwo Jima. His father died when Woody was 9 years old. Lloyd Williams collapsed in the field one afternoon, his heart giving out after decades of brutal labor. The older children had to take over the farm work. The younger ones had to grow up fast. Woody attended a one-room schoolhouse in Quiet Dell. He was an average student, more interested in the outdoors than in books. He hunted squirrels and rabbits. He learned to shoot with a precision that would later qualify him for specialized weapons training. By the time he graduated from high school in 1941, the world was at war. Germany had conquered most of Europe. Japan was expanding across Asia. Woody tried to enlist immediately after Pearl Harbor. He walked into the Marine recruiting station in Fairmont, West Virginia, on December 8, 1941, ready to fight. The recruiter looked at him and shook his head. "You're too short, son." The Marine Corps had a minimum height requirement of 5 feet 8 inches. Woody Williams stood 5 feet 6 inches. He was rejected for being 2 inches too short. He went home and kept working on the farm. He watched his brothers enlist one by one. He waited for the Marine Corps to change its mind. In August 1943, the Marine Corps lowered its height requirement. The war was consuming men faster than the recruiting stations could replace them. Woody Williams walked back into the Fairmont recruiting station and signed his name on the enlistment papers. He was 19 years old. Boot camp at San Diego transformed the farm boy from West Virginia into a Marine. The drill instructors discovered his shooting ability early and recommended him for specialized weapons training. Woody qualified expert on the rifle range. After basic training, he was assigned to the 21st Marines, 3rd Marine Division. His specific assignment was flamethrower operations. The M20-2 flamethrower was not a weapon for the faint of heart. Its fuel mixture burned at over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The weapon could project fire 40 to 50 yards, turning bunkers into ovens and defenders into screaming torches. It was also incredibly dangerous for the operator. The fuel tanks were essentially bombs. A single incendiary round could ignite the fuel, turning the Marine into a human fireball. Japanese defenders specifically targeted flamethrower operators. Woody trained with the flamethrower for months. He practiced approaching fortified positions, using terrain for cover, timing his attacks. He learned that the weapon required courage not just to use, but to carry into combat. The 3rd Marine Division shipped to the Pacific in late 1943. Woody's first combat came during the Battle of Guam in July 1944. The fighting was intense. Woody used his flamethrower against cave positions that conventional weapons couldn't touch. He learned what burning men sounded like. He learned to ignore the screaming and focus on the mission. After Guam, the division returned to training. The next operation would be even bigger, even bloodier. The target was a small volcanic island, 750 miles south of Tokyo. Iwo Jima. The planning for Iwo Jima began in late 1944. American commanders knew the island would be critical for the final assault on Japan. Iwo Jima was defended by approximately 21,000 Japanese soldiers under the command of General Tadamichi Kuribayashi. The general was a skilled tactician who had studied in the United States before the war. He designed his defenses to maximize American casualties. Unlike previous Japanese commanders, Kuribayashi did not waste his men in futile banzai charges. He ordered his soldiers to dig in, to fortify their positions, to kill as many Americans as possible before dying. The Marines landed on February 19, 1945. The first waves hit the beaches at 0900 and immediately encountered withering fire. The Japanese had registered their weapons on the landing zones. They waited until the beaches were crowded, then opened fire from every direction. By nightfall on D-Day, over 2,000 Marines had been killed or wounded. The beachhead was barely 700 yards deep. The flag raising on Mount Suribachi on February 23rd became the iconic image of the battle, but the fighting continued for another month. The island was not secured until March 26th, 35 days after the initial landings. The final casualty count was almost beyond comprehension. Over 6,800 Marines were killed. Over 19,000 were wounded. The Japanese lost over 20,000 dead, only 216 captured. Woody Williams fought through all 35 days. After destroying the 7 pillboxes on February 23rd, Williams continued operating his flamethrower throughout the battle. He was assigned to assault teams that attacked cave positions and bunker complexes across the island. He lost count of how many pillboxes he destroyed. The official record credits him with the 7 on February 23rd. but his actual total was certainly higher. Williams was wounded twice during the battle, both times continuing to fight. The first wound was a shrapnel fragment in his leg. He pulled the fragment out himself and kept moving. The second wound was a bullet graze along his arm. The Marines around him were dying constantly. Friends he had trained with in Hawaii were killed beside him. The casualties were so heavy that units which had landed with 250 men were down to 50 by the end of the battle. Williams survived by luck and skill in equal measure. He learned to read the terrain, to anticipate where Japanese fire would come from, to move when the enemy was reloading. By the time Iwo Jima was declared secure on March 26th, Williams had been fighting continuously for 35 days. He had lost over 20 pounds. His uniform was in tatters. His hands were scarred from burns. He was alive. Thousands of others were not. The recommendation for the Medal of Honor went forward in April 1945. Captain Beck wrote the initial citation. He described how Williams had single-handedly destroyed 7 reinforced pillboxes over 4 hours of continuous combat, advancing repeatedly into machine gun fire. The Marine Corps approved the recommendation. The Navy Department approved it. The President approved it. On October 5th, 1945, Corporal Herschel Woodrow Williams stood in the East Room of the White House. President Harry Truman placed the Medal of Honor around his neck. "I accept this on behalf of the guys who didn't make it," Williams said later. "Every one of them deserved this more than I did." Williams remained on active duty after receiving the Medal of Honor. He trained new Marines at Camp Lejeune and Camp Pendleton. He shared his combat knowledge with young men who would never experience the kind of fighting he had survived. In 1948, Williams was discharged from the Marine Corps. He returned to West Virginia, married Ruby Meredith, and tried to build a normal life. The transition was difficult. Williams struggled with what would later be called post-traumatic stress disorder. The nightmares came regularly. The smell of certain fuels could trigger flashbacks. Loud noises sent him diving for cover. He worked various jobs in the years after his discharge. He moved to Huntington, West Virginia, and raised 3 daughters with Ruby. He attended church regularly, finding comfort in faith. But the war never entirely left him. He could be talking about ordinary things, and suddenly his eyes would go distant. Ruby learned to recognize the signs, to bring him back gently from wherever his mind had taken him. She understood that her husband had seen things that couldn't be unseen. Williams became an advocate for veterans. He noticed that the families of fallen service members received little recognition after the initial notification of death. They grieved in silence while the nation moved on. In 2010, at the age of 87, Williams founded the Woody Williams Foundation. The organization's mission was to honor Gold Star families. The foundation established memorial monuments in every state, created scholarships for children of the fallen, and provided support services for families dealing with loss. The work consumed his final decades. Williams traveled constantly, dedicating monuments, meeting with Gold Star families, speaking at ceremonies. He was driven by survivor's guilt, he admitted. He could not bring back the fallen, but he could ensure they were not forgotten. He could not heal the grief of Gold Star families, but he could acknowledge their loss and honor their loved ones. By 2020, the Woody Williams Foundation had dedicated Gold Star families memorial monuments in 49 states. Williams, now 97 years old, attended as many dedications as his health allowed. "They gave everything," he would say. "The least we can do is remember." Williams became the last living Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. One by one, the other recipients passed away. Williams was alone. The responsibility weighed on him. He was the last living link to a generation that had fought and won the greatest war in human history. He used the platform his longevity provided. He testified before Congress about veterans' issues. He met with presidents and generals. He advocated for mental health services for returning soldiers. On June 29, 2022, Herschel Woodrow Williams died at the VA Medical Center in Huntington, West Virginia. He was 98 years old. The president ordered flags lowered to half-staff. The Marine Corps issued statements praising his courage. Gold Star families posted messages of gratitude. Williams lay in state at the United States Capitol on July 14, 2022. He was only the 35th person in American history to receive this honor. He was buried at the memorial site he had helped create in Huntington, West Virginia. Gold Star families attended from across the country. Marines in dress uniforms provided the honor guard. Taps echoed across the hillside as the last Medal of Honor recipient from World War II was laid to rest. The Woody Williams Foundation continues his work. New monuments are dedicated each year. New families receive support. New generations learn about the sacrifices of those who serve. The flamethrower that Williams used on Iwo Jima is displayed at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. Visitors can see the weapon that burned out 7 pillboxes. Woody Williams was the last of them, the last man who had earned the Medal of Honor in that battle, the last living connection to February 23, 1945. His legacy extends beyond the pillboxes he destroyed. It extends to the families he helped, to the monuments he dedicated, to the veterans he advocated for. He used the platform that courage had given him to serve others for the rest of his life. "I'm no hero," he said repeatedly. "The heroes are the ones who didn't come home. I'm just the one who got lucky enough to survive." Lucky or not, he used that survival well. He turned 77 years of life after Iwo Jima into service that touched thousands of families. On Iwo Jima, Woody Williams destroyed 7 pillboxes with a flamethrower, opening the way for the Marine advance. The action took 4 hours and cost the lives of 2 of the 4 Marines assigned to cover him. In the 77 years after Iwo Jima, Woody Williams built a foundation, dedicated monuments in 49 states, and spent countless hours with families who had lost everything to war. Both achievements mattered. Both required courage. Both deserve remembrance. Ida, the farm boy from Quiet Dell, who was too short for the Marines, became the last living Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. He carried that burden with grace and used it to serve others until his final breath. That is the legacy of Woody Williams. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Are you watching from West Virginia, where Woody Williams was born and buried? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Tell us if you visited one of the Gold Star family memorial monuments that Woody Williams dedicated. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Woody Williams and the 6,800 Marines who died on Iwo Jima don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen. He was too short for the Marines. He burned out 7 pillboxes with a flamethrower. He spent 77 years honoring the fallen. That is the story. That is the legacy. That is Woody Williams.